Hallet, and I was president of the organization from 1991 to 1992, and served in the position of Secretary-Treasurer in the late 1980s. I guess what I recall particularly about the time of my presidency, and one of the issues that concerned the organization at that time, was the rapid change in reimbursement for doing EMG testing that was happening about that time. There was great concern about the economic issues. Many things were happening, and I was particularly ignorant of all of those, since I was working at that time for the National Institutes of Health, where I still work. We have a type of clinical activity there in which we don't charge patients for anything that we do. So all of these things that are happening in the external world in terms of reimbursement was nothing that was directly affecting the way that we practiced. So when people were coming to the meetings and talking about all these external pressures and the different types of reimbursement, it wasn't anything that I really understood from direct experience. Nevertheless, it was clear that it was that type of factor that was very important, and the organization began to emphasize that considerably in terms of the amount of time that was devoted at the level of the board meetings in terms of how we should help the members in this regard, and members were clearly concerned about it in terms of asking questions to the office and things of that sort. So I think that I was able to manage the beginning of this type of activity relatively well, but I also remember having a feeling of relief when I was all done with the presidency, that I didn't have to worry about this problem, which I was not particularly an expert. So it was a very substantial sense of what the external world was doing to the organization at that time. In terms of the types of memories that I have of serving the organization through times of working on the board, working as Secretary-Treasurer, and working as President, I think that the types of memories I have are really a series of them, of warm friendships and interrelationships with the different people that were also working for the organization. The AAEE and then the AAEM has always been a organization where very enthusiastic people were working for the common good, and that's a sort of sense that I've had about the organization. It has always been a major concern of everyone to try to balance the needs of both the neurologists and the physiatrists in the organization. And I think that that's been good in terms of learning about politics, making friends and keeping friendships. And I think that's been another important aspect of the organization. One of the particular memories that I have relates to a trip to the annual Finance Committee meeting of the organization. As a Secretary-Treasurer and President, and for some reason, for many years after that, I seemed to be one of the constant members of the Finance Committee, which has its annual meeting in the middle of winter in Rochester, Minnesota. That's the time of the year that I think that, with a particular event of the year in which I was always the coldest, regardless of whatever else was happening during the course of any particular winter. I remember one trip up to Minnesota in a snowstorm. There were many snowstorms, of course, that were occurring about this time, but one particularly where we tried to leave from Minneapolis to go to Rochester, relatively short flight, but it was snowing relatively heavily and began to snow heavier and heavier after we boarded. The plane was de-iced a few times, and then we finally were able to take off. It was snowing heavily enough that you couldn't see anything out the window other than white, and just continued to look out the window periodically, and then all of a sudden there was a big noise and the plane jolted. I didn't realize what had happened for a moment, then I realized that we had landed. So that was a particularly great relief, I must say. In terms of accomplishments during the period that I served the organization in a leadership capacity, the only thing that I can remember about all that is helping to guide the organization during a time of great growth. I think it was either in my administration or about that we finally had a $1 million budget for the organization. And I do recall that as being a particular sign of the growth and health of the organization. I've been asked to also answer the question, what was it like to practice medicine and electrodiagnostic medicine at the time that I was president. I think I mentioned earlier that during the time of my presidency, I had moved to the National Institutes of Health, where my practice was largely research in nature. I think that the type of practice that I was doing is really rather unusual for people who are in the organization, most people being regular practitioners or doing regular work in the field of electrodiagnostic medicine. I think that doing research has, for me at least, has always been particularly fun. It is a chance to explore new avenues, develop new techniques and methods, and increase understanding. That's been a type of career path that I've taken over the years. As I mentioned before, in terms of the way that most people were practicing EMG about that time, the major external force of the reducing reimbursement and other complex rules about reimbursement began to influence the practice of electrodiagnostic medicine. That was the biggest thing that was going on at that time. It has continued to pervade the practice of medicine ever since. And I think that it was those early times that was clearly a big force around the time that I was the president of the organization. I guess those are all the ideas that I have for the moment. Bye.